Welcome back to In Pursuit of Magic, where we explore the things that inspire us, connect us, and the magic we find along the way. I'm Matthew Medina, and today's very special guest is an incredibly talented performer who has been part of some iconic productions, such as the Addams Family musical, Evita, Rock of Ages, Dracula, Shrek the Musical, and was just announced as joining Chicago at the Caguas Fine Arts Center in Puerto Rico. Please welcome Alejandra Reyes Centofanti. Alejandra, thank you so much for joining. You've been
Thank you.
such
Thank you for
part of such
having
great
me.
productions, and I'm very excited to talk about all the stuff, all your inspirations and all your experiences. It seems like you keep busy.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's been wild. I feel like all of this has happened in like a span of 2, kind of 3 years, but it feels like a bit longer than that because it's been so much. But yeah, it's been amazing.
Well, it makes me wonder then how you got your interest in performing in the first place. Did it start at a young age, or was it later in life? And was it maybe a show or a person or just kind of something more organic?
So I've been training in ballet since I was 7 years old. That's the thing that has been like the constant for me this whole time. And I went to a specialized public school in ballet for 3 years from like 8th grade to 10th grade. And when I was in 10th grade, I remember they would take our school to watch these high school musical productions. And I remember watching In the Heights, a high school musical production of In the Heights from Ceding. Ceding was a high school, is still a high school, but back in the day, it was like top notch high school musical theater program, like on the island. And I remember watching this production of In the Heights, and not only did I obviously, and like I had the time of my life as an audience, but I felt like, when you have this itch, or at least for me, I had the itch to really want to be on stage with all of them. Like I was like, I have to do this. This is something that really like catched my eye instantly. Um and so I left the school that I was in to go to studying the last 2 years of high school from 11th to like 12th grade. And I entered the musical theater program there, and that was like kind of my introduction to musical theater per se. And I just instantly fell in love with it. Growing up, I did some choir in the music conservatory and I did some choir at school as well. So I felt like I always had an affinity to performing in general, like singing and acting and dancing, not only ballet, even though ballet was like the one thing that I really stuck to. But yeah, I started in high school, like mainly doing musical theater. And from there graduated. And the first time that I did like a professional production was West Side Story when they did it here in 2023. And it was really wild because I remember auditioning and I was still 19 or just turned 20. And the audition process was insane because it was in this huge theater with like the panel. You have Michael Santana and you have the whole gang there. I remember I went through the dance call. I then went to the like voice part of the audition. And even though I was so nervous because the singing has always been like the thing that really, it's nerve-wracking just because I it's not the thing that I've trained the most, but I just trusted that I've been practicing the song for the longest time. I'm just going to do my best. And after that, I think he appreciated it. Marcos has never seen me before West Side Story. I think they did In the Heights in the Coliseum, and Didi Romero was there, and like that was like the previous production that they did, but I never auditioned for that. And then when we met in West Side, that was basically it for us. I mean, I got to meet Michael Santana, and after that, I had the privilege to be a part of basically every other production that he's done here with Bass Entertainment as like the production company.
It's incredible. And I hear
Yeah.
the crowd over there in Puerto Rico is incredible and very alive and very responsive.
Yes.
So what was that
Extreme.
experience, that being like your first production and kind of getting to experience that with a live audience?
I mean, it was surreal, and the opening night, getting to meet Rita Moreno, I still can't believe that that happened. They brought her here. Lin Manuel Miranda was here. I genuinely still think about that, and it's like a fever dream because, you kind of everything happens so fast and you're not really processing it at the moment, and after the fact, you're like, "Wait, that really happened." It's so wild. And yeah, I mean, the crowd, it's unlike anything I've ever experienced. I mean, the only other productions with, like, an audience that I've done have been, like, ballet productions, and, I mean, not only here, but I feel like it's a universal thing of, the that sort of audience that attracts ballet. It's just a little more tame, it's, like, a little more sophisticated, it's a little more I don't really know how to explain it, but I guess with musical theater and more so on the island, they're definitely more responsive and they're not afraid to like be there with you and keep you on your toes, and it's exhilarating. It's really the funnest experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know part of that is maybe the lack of live theater and musicals that are over there, that when there is something, it's a big deal. A lot of times they sell out, people love to go,
Mhm.
it's really into it, and I think it's incredible that's one of your first experiences too, because it really, I think, maybe help bolster your confidence and your energy and love for what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and also kind of the bar was just set so high after the fact. I'm like, well, what, like, what comes after this, you know? But I've genuinely just had the huge honor of maintaining, production after production because I feel like Evita and Adams, all of these other productions have been amazing experiences. I have absolutely nothing, like, bad to say about any of them, not only in terms of the feedback with the audience and, like, but in terms of the the space that you create with every other artist there. It's extremely comfortable, extremely safe, it's a big thanks to obviously production, but Marcos as a director who has also been like the constant thing throughout these productions. He just creates the utmost space for all of us to really just like unapologetically do what we're supposed to do there. Yeah.
Yeah, which I know is very special because I hear a lot that that's not the same experience with every production, and it really
No.
depends on top to bottom a lot of different factors. But when that space is created, there's something magical that I think is created, and it seems like a lot of times that also creates a space for community and friendships that maybe in the tougher times really come in handy, people to lean on and different projects you can be part of. So how do you think that experience then and, in repeated experiences with a similar group of people has kind of affected your experience in performing?
I mean, absolutely. It was very shocking, I feel like, the first time, and it still happens to this day, but I remember the first time just because it was like that drastic change of I've been accustomed to the ballet environment and being in a ballet company. Not to say that it's a bad thing, but it's also no news to anybody that there's a bit of love-hate, toxicity, like, relationship in the ballet world in general. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of comparison, a lot of, the thing that is asked of you and expected of you is just so different from me coming into the space of musical theater, of playing. Like, I felt like everyone was able to just play, just have fun. Tr Everyone's got, like, everyone's there for a reason, so it was never any doubt of, "Why am I here?" You know, that imposter syndrome that just attacks you, and it's so normal to go through that, but I I've never really experienced that in any of these projects because you are so assured of your space there. And so I very appreciative of the space that they created, the community, of course, and the people that I've connected with that I can call friends now. I mean, one of my biggest inspirations for the longest time, for example, was Didi Romero, and the fact that I was able to do Rock of Ages with her and call her a friend now and just connect with people, and there aren't any like, like, you kind of put a certain people in a pedestal, and then you feel like you're not gonna be able to connect with them, but we're all human at the end of the day, so being able to just be there with her and get her sense of humor and all of these things, you really can let loose, which I feel like has been the toughest part when I get to compare that to, for example, like being in a more stricter environment when it comes to ballet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really a beautiful and amazing experience. I mean, I know me just doing this podcast and getting to talk to you and others has been a similar experience where getting to connect as human beings and talk about being creative and wanting to follow a dream and what that experience is like and the ups and downs of it, I think it's such a beautiful thing to connect in that way. And it seems like when you're performing and you get to be part of ensembles and work with others in that kind of environment, it's so helpful not only to create that safe space, but to have people to lean on in between projects and when things do get tough. I mean, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and it's such a special thing to not have to face that so much because of the people you get to lean on. And so I'm
Absolutely.
wondering in the other times when maybe things are a little quieter or you feel like you're not getting as many yeses as you would like, how does that
Mhm.
come in handy to help you get through those moments?
Oh my gosh. Well, I the you know the fact that I've been able to have these experiences outside of ballet and still maintaining that job because I haven't left that space. I'm still a member of the company and I've been a member of the company this whole time, but my approach to it has changed so drastically because I do feel like previous to, for example, doing West Side specifically because that's the first time that, like, that door was opened, and then I kept on doing other musicals, but previous to that, I definitely feel like I pushed myself to certain limits or was just constantly looking for validation in that, ballet environment and not getting anywhere because I I was, to a certain extent, just doing things to please other people or it's for to prove myself and not necessarily listening to what I needed into my body and stuff. That's why after I did West Side Story, a lot was happening because I also competed in this ballet competition and we were doing Giselle, which is a big ballet production, and then we repeated that production in a really short amount of time. And we kept on training and I kind of never stopped. And it and I pushed myself to a point where I had an injury and I needed surgery because I broke my ACL. That was 2023. I genuinely think that from that, like, I was a performer previous to that injury and then afterwards. And it's a really atrocious thing, but sometimes you only learn the hard way. And I think that's what had to happen to me because I even though I was hurting and I was, like, already, like, feeling like I had to take a beat, I was pushing myself, and that's why I injured myself, like, it was all my fault. But after that surgery and all the physical therapy that I had to do afterwards and, like, the rehab of it all and, like, also, like, the mental wellness of it all because it's not just your body, you have to take care of everything. I started to tackle it differently, and each time I went to the ballet and up until now, it feels different because I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore, and if maybe I don't fit in maybe the director's vision in this production and you don't wanna put me in this, and that's fine. Whatever you're gonna put me in, I know I'm gonna shine, I'm gonna do a great like, I'm gonna do the best that I can. So I've kind of taken it with that sort of mentality because I think the biggest struggle for me has been that in the ballet where I felt like I really wanted to get a certain role or get to a certain point, and it was always like this pushback. And it wasn't up until, to be honest, well, Dracula recently that it just kind of really like it happened for me. Yeah.
Well, I think that's incredible to take that lesson from an experience that could be very scary and kind of make
Mhm.
you stop in your tracks. It brings me to someone's advice that they were just telling me the other day where they said the advice they would give to anyone chasing after something is slow down. And I think
Exactly.
that ties into the idea of having to prove yourself, which I think is very hard in any field, but especially in creative fields. I feel like
Mhm.
even when you are feeling like you're successful and you're doing stuff and you're doing what you want to do, there's still okay, well, the next thing you want to do, you got to prove yourself again, and then you got to prove yourself again. And I think it's amazing you're coming to a point where you know what you're capable of. And I think maybe there's a value in if you're going to prove anything to anyone, it's proving something to yourself
Absolutely.
and not to others. And it seems like that's what you've been doing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
ever since that injury, you've also been very busy. Things are working.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's still a journey, you keep learning, obviously, and you're gonna have your ups and downs, but that's definitely yeah, it's definitely the mentality right now.
I was curious also, going into theater and musicals from ballet, was there anything that particularly surprised you about the experience, whether it's rehearsals or actual performing or being in front of an audience?
Well, rehearsals are very different from, the structure that we have to go through in the ballet because we have something that's already like, it's structured. So at least where I work, we have to train for like an hour and a half mostly. The classes are an hour and a half in the morning, and then rehearsals last like 3 hours. And that's from Monday to Friday. And when it comes to these musical productions, usually we just have a month to like, it's created and we rehearse it and we just throw it out there and it's kind of like an intensive, it's like a boot camp, but it's the funnest boot camp and everyone's got like, their head in the game and I think everyone is very clear about what comes up, like what the result has to be. So it's definitely a little bit more fast paced, but also the rehearsals are longer so in musical theater, it's usually like we have to rehearse for a month, and it's from Monday to Saturday from 4 to 10. And well, obviously the fact that you have to add the not only the movement and the dancing aspect, but the singing part and the what you're projecting and the acting and everything at first, I remember my this was back in high school, but I remember auditioning for Mimi in Rent when we did Rent in high school, and I really wanted to be Mimi. But back then, and I'm still working on it, but I've worked on it this whole time. Back then, it was so hard for me to keep like that stamina while singing and dancing, and Mimi is such a hard character to do because that's the whole thing. She's an incredible dancer and she's like belting like she's got to have both of those strong suits. So I didn't get the part, but I remember that I had to work harder on that singing aspect and on that stamina and how do I like all the breath work and all of these things that are going to get me to hopefully one day be able to do a character like that. So those are things I definitely learned along the way that I kind of also took back with me in ballet even though we're not necessarily doing anything vocal. You have to be able to control your breath work when dancing and create your stamina and not look like you're dying because the whole point obviously of ballet as people can attest to is having to seem graceful and like you're picture perfect while you're dying inside and you're hurting and your toes are bleeding and so I definitely took a little bit of that like the focus on your breathing because sometimes you're just going automatic and you're not necessarily thinking. So sometimes it's okay to I mean what you said earlier, kind of like slow down, take a step back, like what are the sensations that I'm going through and not just going autopilot because that's not always a good thing. So I think going through obviously both experiences in musicals as well as in ballet, I've just kind of been able to grasp certain things from each space and like you know better my training and all that.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible and so helpful to be part of two semi-different worlds that kinda help feed each other and both serve a purpose in you because it clearly like feeds a fire in you and helps keep you creative and helps you keep training in your craft in both areas, which is incredible
Mhm.
that they help each other out in that way. And I know that's not always easy, and especially when things get tough or you're facing a lot more closed doors or obstacles in your way. I'm curious, how do you manage to overcome those moments and keep moving forward? Especially when at the same time you're still training, you're still doing the thing, you're still putting in the energy and the work and physically demanding stuff.
Yeah, I don't think I would be able to at this point in my life to only do ballet because I've gotten to a point where it's not as fulfilling and it's just not my ultimate goal anymore. Maybe at one point in my life it was when I was way younger, but I think being introduced to musical theater and doing it professionally and being surrounded by people of that industry and being seen in a different light, I obviously, as I was kind of saying that kind of it helps me from side to side because I feel like that sort of visibility in musical theater helped me create even more confidence in the ballet because even though it's been the thing that I've mastered this whole time or like my strength, I've felt so much like doubt or never really felt like good enough and like entre comillas. But I feel like after me noticing like I've always wanted to kind of stay versatile and like multidisciplinary and like not I don't like boxes and I've never liked to stay in one place ever because it feels very limiting and it's been like that since since I was a child cuz growing up I remember I think I started taking violin lessons and I did that for like 2 years and then I did piano lessons and then I did some sports and then I've always been kind of jumping in and out of places, but it always had something to do with art or like a physical activity or something because um I just never wanted to close myself to one thing. And even though ballet has been that main thing and like the string throughout, musical theater and theater in general and acting and I feel like it's equally as, important for me. And as what you were saying of like not necessarily getting a certain part or maybe I just have to stay at the ballet and I didn't necessarily book the next musical. I do think that everything is about timing and it's about the type of project and it's about the people involved and it's not necessarily like a lost opportunity, but instead you are going to take that time to maybe do something else and craft something else for the next thing. I don't necessarily see it as either a failure or a loss because, there's only so many few of us and not sadly not everyone's going to get, the thing. And it's happened to me before like my best friend, I remember in Shrek for example, like I got in and she didn't and it was heartbreaking, but we both talked about it and we knew like it's fine because you're going to use this time for something else that's going to help you later on and that's exactly what happened and it's not necessarily a lost opportunity. It just wasn't it wasn't the right timing or the right moment or whatever and that's how I kind of see it because also you have to if you start like accumulating all the no's and pushing yourself down it's just going to be way harder for the next time around to try again. You got to somehow, I feel like maybe it's a defense mechanism, I don't know, but you have to see it as a good thing so it doesn't, yeah, so it just doesn't derail you because it can easily happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautifully said. And I think that's actually really great advice for everyone listening because it's so easy to derail someone with some kind of setback or disappointment. And sometimes it's a lot harder where you can have 100 people saying, "You are so great, you're so talented, you're good at this, is where you belong." And all it takes is one disappointment to be like, I don't know, should I really be here or not? And so I'm curious what other advice you would give to someone who has a dream but is kind of overwhelmed by kind of the grandeur of it, and maybe of those moments of feeling like, "I'm not sure if I'm good enough to do this."
hmm I mean, it can easily get so overwhelming when you kind of look at the big picture, but I do feel like it's got to be step by step. Everything happens slowly but surely. I in terms of the thing that to me cost me the most, which was like finding my place in the ballet, which I have kind of sacrificed so much for so long. And I was at a point where I was kind of giving up. But, as I kind of went on about the injury, I just started tackling it differently. When you start, I feel like It's when you start thinking of, like the bigger picture, and not necessarily, if you start giving something so much importance, and like it's this or nothing, and you kind of put this pressure on something, that's when it kind of fails, because everything is just an instant in your life. And the other day I was talking to one of the first ballerinas of Puerto Rico. Her name is Bettina, and we just finished Cascanueces, the Nutcracker, and there was one of the dances in the Nutcracker which I despise. I hate doing it. It's the worst because it's just so ungrateful. I remember her telling me, like, when I did this dance before, someone told me, like, this is just an instant in your life. You're going to go in, it's going to feel even shorter than it actually is. Like, and this is more so when you're talking about something that maybe you don't want to do, but you still have to do it. It's nothing lasts forever. So I feel like when you receive a no, or when it gets harder to reach a certain point, if you genuinely have it in you to keep persevering and to keep pushing and putting in the work, because I do feel like there's a difference between, yes, I strongly believe in manifestation and determination, and having that mindset, but there's a lot of also the work ethic that comes with it, and training. If you keep doing that, it's eventually going to happen. Because I mean, if you don't train, and you're not necessarily investing time in perfecting your craft or whatever, but you're just really wishing that this is going to happen, I don't think that that's the way. So I just, with balance, because we don't want to burn out, and we can easily also burn out mentally and physically. But with balance, just trying to keep a steady pace at your training, your craft, what your strengths are, and your weaknesses. Like, strengthening your weaknesses is also a thing that I feel like you have to invest time in. You're eventually going to get there. It's just about going at your own pace, because we easily, as artists, because I've gone through it as well, you compare yourself to other people's timeline, and it's impossible for you to feel like you're at the top of the world when you see someone who at 18 years old has done this and this and that, and is on Broadway, and has done, like, I that's amazing for them, but that's not your timeline. When you start to really digest the fact that you're going at your own route and your own pace, and there's not a right or wrong timing for things, is when I think you start just to kind of be at peace with all of that.
Completely agree. And I think it needs to be said also that everyone has different starting points. And
Mhm.
sometimes those like left turns and swerves kind of take you where you need to be, even if it wasn't where you necessarily thought you would be. And then you'll
Yeah,
probably get to where you wanted to be anyway, but with those other little moments that somehow helped you, that kind of contributed to your experience. There's a lot of magic there. And it's
absolutely.
interesting you talk about manifestation, but then also putting in the work. I was just making me think of Princess and the Frog and Tiana being told by her dad, like, yeah, you keep wishing on those stars, but you also got to put in the work. And
Yes,
that's what she did the whole movie. So it's like, yeah,
exactly.
there's something to be said about that, where there's every individual has a certain amount of power within themselves, where they can change their own life. They can shape their path.
100%.
And of course, it lines up with meeting the right people, talking to people, making the right friendships, surrounding yourself with good experiences, but also, yeah, like you said, working on your craft, putting in that work, making yourself better all the time. Um, and it seems like each experience for you has been helpful and different in some way. And so I'm very curious so far, what do you think has been your most magical production experience that has kind of left you in a place afterward that you felt like really just rejuvenated and inspired?
Oh my god. Um, okay, I don't know if I can just pick one, but I have, just because it was the most recent one that just kind of, I do think, changed a lot of things for me. Doing Dracula was an experience unlike any other, for many reasons, but one of them being that they brought in this choreographer, from outside of the island. He's this Argentinian choreographer that just basically came in to see the company and kind of audition us to see who he wanted to put in what sort of role or corps de ballet or and I've always loved more of the neoclassical ballets, not so classical. I think I've sort of like swerved the other way always because I'm not the most classically driven dancer, but this was like the first time in a really long time where they decided to bringing this person with his vision, which was completely unlike anything we've ever done, choreography wise, and like the storyline, and it's dark, and there's a lot of acting involved. It's super theatrical, and so the fact that he came in with no expectation, knowing no one, and there's no opportunity of like, there's always some sort of like under the table. You have like your connections or you kind of pull for someone, but he knew absolutely no one. And the person that he wanted to put in, that's the person that he wanted to put in. And our director just had to give him that space because that's the contract. So the fact that he came in and he saw something in me that was complementary with his vision for Dracula, and gave me the opportunity to play Lucy, which I'm not biased, but maybe I am, is like my favorite character of Dracula anyways. I've always been obsessed with vampires and I've always been obsessed with like that whole world. So it's just not only like a passion project, but also the opportunity of doing a role like that, and being seen and just being challenged in that way. That really proved like that I was kind of in the right space, and I was in the right sort of like paving the right way also for myself because previous to that it was just like this constant like kind of you're in the back, and I have my principles, and I was just never one of them. So the fact that this unbiased person came in and saw that I could do what he had in mind and gave me that sort of spotlight, I it just completely changed a lot of my perspective and just the love that I also have for ballet, because I just was sadly so influenced by the environment that I was being accustomed to, that my love for it was was just becoming really toxic, and I was resenting it a little bit. And so I just really, I guess what you said of like feeling rejuvenated or feeling like I came back into myself, it was definitely a life-changing experience. Yeah. And being able to also challenge myself doing like ballet, which is dancing and partner with someone else, which is very difficult, but I hadn't had the opportunity to do a lot of them before. So that was new, and it was a very collaborative and also like a really safe space, and I have no complaints whatsoever. So in terms of, yeah, production that changed me, definitely that. In terms of the musicals, it's so hard to pick one, and I guess Adam's Family was just so, it was too smooth sailing and kind of picture perfect, if I'm being honest. Adam's Family, the whole cast and the whole like production team, like everything, there was nothing that went wrong in that production. And for musical theater, I feel like there's always going to be something. There's kind of always something that gets tipped off or goes. And in Adams, like nothing. It was also just like surreal in terms of the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, which I've heard that that production was just really perfect, like everything lined up in the right way. And it seems like your other experience really helped bring you to the forefront for one of the first times, which I'm wondering what that felt like, where you felt like maybe you were seen and were able to prove to yourself what you were capable of.
Yeah. It was very emotional, and that sort of like post-show depression, I think I'm still going through it because everything happens so fast. You're done with the show, and then the week afterwards, I was like, "Wait, but I kind of I miss the little fangs," and like, ugh. Um, I it proved that it kind of like reassured me that I'm where I needed to be, and it also made me closer with with the art itself and with certain friends, and I felt so much support. I think that matters a lot. I feel like in this industry in general, like theater, ballet, whatever it is, there can be a lot of jealousy or a lot of like, that there can be a lot of animosity, and it could have easily gone in a way where, well, I had this opportunity. I'm gonna have people that are gonna be pissed and are gonna feel a certain type of way, but everyone was so supportive and everyone was also so reassuring and made me feel like, dude, you deserve this. Like this is great. So it was just emotional and in that sense as well. And after the fact, the feedback from the audience was wild. And it was the first time also that a lot of people that had never seen ballet or are not really accustomed to going to the ballet went to see Dracula, because I feel like for the first time we went sold out so fast because it's just such, it's a poppy name. Like everyone knows Dracula. And I think the curiosity of, what do you mean Dracula ballet? Like, what is that about? And the promo and everything, I feel like people were really like engaged. And so the feedback afterwards, and everyone that went that maybe aren't familiar with ballet left super like grateful and very happy with what they saw, and also very emotional, and that was overwhelming because I received a lot of people coming up to me like, I am such a big fan of anything like gothic and Dracula and all of these things, and I've never seen a ballet, and this changed, like it was amazing. So it was obvious, it was just overwhelming and a lot to kind of process in the moment, which took me a minute, and maybe still I'm still kind of processing it. So yeah, I mean, it was truly a magical experience.
Absolutely, and it sounds like it was the magic was coming from all these different areas, and it all just lined
Mhm.
up to give you this kinda life-changing experience. And it makes me very curious also about what your favorite part of the process is. What do you think when do you think you felt the most magic? Was it in the rehearsals, being surrounded by everyone and knowing that you're working on something different for yourself? Was it performing it or interacting with the audience after?
I think the so we started rehearsing, and it was just the choreographer, Dracula, and me for like the first week or two. So there wasn't anyone else in the room because we were rehearsing like early in the morning. It was like a different schedule because we really had to speed up the process. So we added a lot of hours to rehearsals and stuff. So it was just us for a hot minute. Yeah, when it came to the rehearsals with with everything involved, and later at night with everyone else kind of like sitting around the room. I remember them watching like a scene that I had with Dracula, which I kind of start getting, there's like there's a blood transfusion scene that they do to Lucy in Dracula, and she's converting slowly into a vampire. And there's this whole scene that he choreographed with me where I have like this sort of like discombobulated moment, and then I invite Dracula in, and I just want him to just like get it over with and kill me. So that whole scene, no one had ever seen it before, and I remember that happening, and then going up to my friends, and they were all like, what just happened?" Like it was just this wild thing that they'd never seen before. And it was a wild experience, but it was so like it was very like exhilarating. And then also being able to rehearse it in the theater, adding like the blood and then the fangs and then all these other like, props and aspect to it. The first time that I had, so casket, right? El ataúd, where you get in, like, is that what the
Yeah, the
casket?
coffin. Yeah.
The coffin, exactly. So, the first time that I got into in the coffin, that was kind of also like a pinch me like, "Okay, this is happening. I have to get out of this coffin, and I have to pretend I just turned into a vampire. And then I have to get back in, and they kill me." When they started out adding all of those elements, it was definitely, "This is actually happening." 'Cause, sometimes in the starting process of productions when you're still creating and everything is still imaginative. And so this is here and this is there and this is here. And I in the back of my head, I'm like, this still maybe can't happen, you know? Maybe the world ends, maybe who knows? Like, what if what if we don't make it to the theater and present this to an audience? So, I feel like that doubt was kind of always there, like, this is really happening. So, when we got to the point where we're in tech, it was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. It was wild, but it was every single step was very, very, like, pinch me moment. It was very exhilarating, and I learned a lot, and I tried to be as present as possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely sounds like a show that lends itself to experiencing a lot of magic in different aspects, which is incredible. And
Mhm.
I also wonder then, how do you hope to create magic for others in any production you're a part of or performances you put on, or even in the process of kind of working on your craft?
Well, I've always felt like the best part of performing and creating art, whatever art that art may be, um, the most it's extremely I'm extremely grateful for especially just causing something to someone else, inspiring someone in any way, shape, or form, or just evoking an emotion. I feel like that's the most magical part of, especially in theater, when, whether it be classical theater, musical theater, or ballet, or whatever. I mean, having someone that went to see Dracula come up to me crying because they felt something is everything. Like, that's it. I love performing and going through the process of looking into that character and getting into that character and really polishing, like, all the technicalities. But at the end of the day, when you get to present this huge thing to an audience, I think the most important part for me is to just make them leave that place feeling something, like anything. I think the the worst thing that could happen that we've all experienced, whether it be whatever art, like scenic art may be, it's just like kind of staying at the superficial level of things. Like, there's no point to that. I strongly, like, feel that you have to get deep into whatever it is that you're doing and, just cause a commotion. Leave people just remembering anything and feeling some type of way. I was gonna say something else. Oh, yeah. No, so I recently did a Meissner technique, like a workshop, and learned a lot from that, obviously, and there's a billion techniques and methods and any art, but it's nice to have those tools because I've really learned one of the things that I just kinda stuck with me is how important it is to listen, and not only listen, but just, like, that sort of sponge that you become with something else, feeding off of each other, because at the end of the day, maybe you're alone on stage and there's no one else with you, but the audience is still there, and it's still like a two-way communication. So it can never feel like these walls are being put up and you can't get through. And I feel like that can easily happen. So and it's not, it takes work, and it's a process to kind of get to a point where there's just more depth to it. But that's kind of, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the magic that I see in what I do.
Beautiful. Yeah, because I think there's a lot of interaction between you and the audience and even with the other people on stage where there's something special that happens. And I think the best productions and the ones that you leave feeling like was so magical is because of that interaction and the listening. And I know
Mhm.
even from hearing you share, like I feel inspired. I feel touched and moved by everything you're saying. And so I think you have that in you and it clearly shows on stage and in the connections you're making. And I know you
Thank
have more coming. You were just announced as joining Chicago in Puerto Rico, which is really exciting. What are you most looking forward to about that experience?
Oh my god. We talked about manifesting. I've been manifesting doing Chicago for the longest time. I swear Chicago is one of my top musicals. I mean, as a dancer, any dancer is going to tell you that because I feel like it's that type of musical. I am looking forward to not only doing Chicago on the island, but it's the first time that I'm also going to do a musical production that's not Bass Entertainment and it's not con Marco Santana and it's not in like the metro area. Everything that I've done is in Bellas Artes de Santurce. It's in the theater that's more like in the city. So Caguas, which is a little further from the metro area, the theater is beautiful. Never done anything there. I've never, I've never rehearsed for any production over there. So it's a first and that excites me a lot because I wanna have different experiences and not not box myself in just this is the way because I feel like every production is gonna be vastly different from the next, and you have to go through different, like, production teams and directors, and that's also important to kinda let yourself be directed in different places. So that is very exciting. There's a lot of people that I haven't worked with, and there's a lot of people that I have, and a lot of friends there. So I'm gonna have a lot of fun. It's in Spanish, and I've never heard Chicago in Spanish, if I'm being super honest. So I have to do some studying,
Wow.
and I am really manifesting being one of the cell block tango murder mistresses. That's something that I'm looking forward to. And if I don't get it, it's fine. But I'm just gonna put it out there.
We're manifesting it. We're putting it out there now.
Yeah.
So when does the production start? What are the dates? And are tickets on sale yet?
Tickets are on sale. Tiquetera.com, tiquetera.com. We are opening night is the 20th of March. And I think we have the 20th, 21st, and then 22nd are on sale. Rehearsals start, if I'm not mistaken, the 8th of February. So we're going to do rehearsals throughout the whole month of February. And yeah, and then we do the shows on March. And then I keep on going. So in the meantime, I'm gonna be rehearsing for Swan Lake, which I have coming up on April.
Wow. So you're gonna be busy, which I hope
Yeah.
means you'll get some rest over the holiday break and some downtime. You're gonna need it.
Thank God we were done with Nutcracker on Sunday, and we finally have 4 weeks, so we have a month to do nothing, and I don't wanna step into a ballet studio.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You deserve the rest. But I'm gonna put
Yeah.
the link for the tickets and where to get them down below with the video.
Yeah.
And Alejandra, thank you so much for coming on and being part of this conversation. I mean, hearing your journey, the things you're doing, the lessons you've learned and are sharing with others, I think is really magical. And I think you really have a clear sight on manifesting your dreams and making them happen and putting in the work, which I think is a great example to others. And I feel very inspired. I feel the magic. So thank you for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been so fun.
Of course, you're welcome anytime. I know you're going to be doing so many other things. So we'll talk again.
Yeah.
But thank you
Yay.
and everyone out there. Go out there and do some magic. Bye, everybody.